All right, what is up guys? It's Raul back. I'm gonna be doing another disc review for you guys today. And we got a couple discs for one person. He's a player by the name of Jacob Curtis. I think some of you guys probably know him. He's an HB local, so most of the SoCal people will definitely know him, and everyone else pretty much knows him too from those awesome tournaments he had down at Goat Hill battling Eagle. Definitely a bomber, super good player, and looking to make a charge on the tour pretty soon here. So he's got a couple of new discs out, and one of them is the Tour Series Peppermint by Clash. This is a overstable approach disc, and we're gonna compare this one with a Zone. And then we got the Cupcake Birdie Discs Ultra, which is an overstable mid-range. It feels pretty good. It's got a tiny bit of dome to it, a pretty good profile in hand, not super deep, and I'm gonna be comparing this one against the Rock X3, so let's see how they fly. All right guys, we got the Cupcake Peppermint. We're gonna throw it straight with a little bit of hyzer, just see how stable she is. Oh yeah, that's definitely beefy. So I threw it with a little bit of hyzer just off to the right. It flew straight for, you know, a little bit and then just slowly kind of dumped, but it definitely got to the ground fast, did not want to stay in the air too long at all. Now let's compare that flight to 5-time Zone. This thing's pretty stiff, pretty flat, and pretty overstable. It's definitely my go-to Zone. Yeah, so ripped at that speed, the Zone definitely went a bit further, I think. I think I ripped them pretty close to each other, pretty similar angles, so I think that's a pretty comparable throw for both of them. I definitely think the Cupcake is a little bit dumpier. It is a little bit deeper in the hand, so I kind of was expecting it to be a little bit more overstable. So let's see how far. Now we got the Cupcake Ultra. I'm really expecting this to fly kind of similar to the Rock X3, so pretty overstable, but not quite like a Gator or a Justice or something like that, like glidey overstable, but really hopefully doesn't want to flip up. Same angle, a little bit of hyzer. Yeah, that was nice. So released on a little bit of hyzer, just kind of pushed straight for a bit and slowly was fading off to the left the whole time. Wasn't super dumpy, but wasn't straight by any means. So it definitely has a good flight to it. Now we'll compare that with my Rock X3 flat top. This thing's pretty overstable. This is currently in my bag, but we'll see. I might be switching it. Honestly, a pretty similar flight. I think those two landed around the same area, probably went around the same distance, and honestly had a pretty similar flight. I think the Rock might have actually been a little bit dumpier, so let's see how far they went. All right guys, so we got the distances on the screen there. As you saw, the Zone went further than the Peppermint, which I kind of expected, and that's kind of why I think I probably will end up bagging the Peppermint, just because I want something for that shorter range that I can still rip hard. For me personally, I like ripping discs full speed and getting them to fly and kind of using the disc to slow itself down rather than pacing down. I tend to miss my line when I slow down, so I think this will be a good addition to the bag. We have a little bit of headwind, maybe 6-7 miles per hour, so we're gonna try to rip them flat into the headwind and kind of see how they react to that. Here's the Peppermint, flat shot into the headwind. All right, to be honest, there's like no headwind right now, so that was kind of just a flat shot, but it did push straight for a little bit and then have that reliable fade. Never got even close to flipping up at all or going to the right. So super reliable disc. And yeah, I mean, there just wasn't much headwind, so can't really say that it wants to fade super hard in the headwind because there's pretty much no wind, but we're gonna try to rip that Zone on that same line. Yeah, so the Zone just went way further. It kind of just pushed straight for a lot further. They had similar flights, but the Zone was more elongated, whereas the Peppermint just went straight for a second flat and then just faded out pretty much right away. So it's a super useful disc if you need to kind of flex it or throw it straight. It's definitely going to give you that early fade if you need it, whereas the Zone will kind of expand and flex out and hold straight for a little bit longer if you want it to. For the mid-ranges, the Ultra actually pushed a little bit straighter than my Rock. I had a feeling This Rock X3 is actually pretty stable even for a Rock X3, so it definitely wants to dump down, which is why I think I might end up liking this disc better. But let's see how they react on a flat shot into the headwind, because I do like this disc for that reason. It doesn't even really want to turn over into any amount of headwind. The wind's picked up a little bit, but not too much, so we're gonna rip them flat and just see how they go. Ultra first. What I'm hoping is it just pushes straight and then has a slow fade out and doesn't turn over at all. Oh yeah, that was pretty good. So I ripped it pretty hard, pretty flat, and there's a decent headwind now. So it kind of pushed straight for a bit, just stayed flat and on a little bit of hyzer, but pushing straight the whole entire time, and then just slowly faded out. It never really wanted to turn over or go right. It just went straight for a while, which I actually like that. Now let's see how this rock handles on that same angle. Wow. So actually very similar flight on that one. I think I released it on a very similar angle and height. So that was good. And it looks like they might be like right next to each other. So they're actually very similar disc. It might just come down to which one I like in the hand better. So again, we had the zone going about 30-ish feet more than the peppermint. I did get the peppermint to like 350-ish, I think, or I'm sorry, 250, definitely not 350. I did get the peppermint to like 250-ish and the zone to like, I don't know, 280 or something like that. But yeah, so the peppermint, even in a little bit of headwind, thrown hard and flat, just wants to get down. And it's definitely good to have a disc like that. And I really like the hand feel to it. It's got some stiff plastic with a little bit of give, nice and flat, and honestly just feels really good in hand. So I think I'm gonna like this for backhand especially. And then my zone, I ripped flat. It just pushed straighter. So it just has that like I was saying earlier, elongated flight. So you throw it flat and hard and it just goes straight for a bit, but never even comes close to turning over. Just fades out at the end there and is reliable, but sometimes it could be hard to tone down on a zone and get that shorter flight when you can just take your peppermint out, give it a nice little rip on hyzer and let it get down to the ground and do its job. So it's definitely good to have both, and I really do think I'll probably be bagging both of these. So while those two approach discs are pretty different in flight and hand feel, these two discs are pretty similar, and they landed, I don't know, 8 feet from each other. So they're definitely pretty similar feeling in the hand. This one has a little bit of dome to it, which I actually like for the backhand. And I'm not really throwing these Rock X3s forehand anyway. So the fact that it's flat doesn't really give me any, you know, value like a flat mid-range normally would if I throw it forehand. But I have kind of other discs for that. I really usually just throw the zone for that slot anyway. So I think for the backhand, I do tend to like a little bit of dome just because it feels a little bit more comfortable in the hand. But we're gonna throw these on some flex lines and just see how the stability holds them over and see if it wants to fight out or if it will hold over for us a little bit. All right, peppermint, low flex lines. So that was low and very cooked over. I think that's probably the only disc in my bag, maybe besides the slammer, that wouldn't just go straight into the ground. So I definitely liked how that flew. It was low, tight, flexing, and then faded out, and even got a little skip forward at the end there. So that's a really good disc and could be useful for that line on like shorter technical shots. So now let's throw the zone and see how those flights compare. That was a pretty similar angle. I even think I threw the zone on a little bit less angle just because I knew how overstable that peppermint was and didn't want it to just go into the ground. And I put it on a little bit of less angle, but I committed nose down and hyzer angle. It flew really well, kind of just acted like more of a straight disc, like just flew straight and slowly drifting to the right and almost landed flat, maybe got a little bit of forward skip at the end, but definitely just had more of like a straight, slowly pushing flight rather than kind of an S-curve that the peppermint had, because it really just holds that stability. Now we're gonna go with the Ultra, try to throw that same line. I have a feeling it's gonna hold over for most of the flight and then maybe get a little skip left. Yep, so definitely pushed right most of the flight. I got some good angle on that. It was kind of just pushing right most of the way, but did definitely have some good stability, like never wanted to go into the ground. So it was pushing right the whole time and then just had some fade at the end and got a nice little skip forward. So that definitely still has some good integrity to it. A little bit more than I thought, to be honest. Now we'll go with the rock, see how she compares. Pretty similar, to be honest. I kind of hung it out left and put some good angle on it, and it really just held to the right the whole time, and then at the last minute kind of faded out and got a little bit of skip. So I'm telling you, those discs are very similar. I think it's really going to come down to the hand feel on each individual disc that you get from those runs. But yeah, I mean, they're both really good molds and have a really good flight, and is definitely a unique slot in the mid-range game. All right, guys, once again, I threw all those discs on a pretty good similar angle, so I'm pretty happy with that. But once again, we got the zone going a little bit further than the peppermint, and I know I sound like a broken record here, but I mean, to me, they're really two different slots. Like, that zone really has that straight, tight forward push, where the peppermint on that flex line kind of flexed over to the right and then came back and skipped hard to the left. So this is a very workable disc to me, like right to left, getting big skips, you know, forehand flicks or backhand skip shots, whereas the zone, you could kind of stretch a little bit straighter and get that reliable push and then still have that good fade at the end. So I mean, now lastly, we're just going to throw them all on some forehands. I don't really ever throw these on flex angles unless I have to, like off the tee or something, but typically I'll just throw it on a slight hyzer, so that's what I'm going to do. We got the peppermint. I'm thinking this is going to be a very dumpy disc. I think it's going to get left to right and down to the ground very fast compared to the zone, and like I've been saying all along, I think that's useful in its own way. So let's see if I'm right. Yeah, so I don't know if I got in the way of that disc there. I kind of yanked it off to the left, but I threw it on hyzer. It stayed on hyzer the whole time, never wanted to flip up at all. We got a little bit of headwind again, but that didn't affect it at all. It got to the ground very fast and really did not fly too far. I did, however, put it on a little more hyzer than I wanted to, so I'm gonna try to throw the zone on that same angle. Yeah, I mean, when you see that forehand, the zone's just noticeably faster and kind of a little bit straighter. Said no one ever from a zone. But yeah, the zone just pushes. It has that forward push, and then the peppermint just wants to get down to the ground. Now, for me personally, this mid-range slot where it's overstable, but not super overstable like a Gator or a Justice, I typically don't throw discs like this forehand. They're more backhand discs where I just throw them a little bit hyzer or flat and just let them slowly glide out, you know, around 300, 310 or so. But I'm gonna throw them on forehands because I know there's some people out there that do throw them on forehands and wanna see how they fly. So let's see how the Ultra does. I think it might have a nice flight. It's just a feel thing for me. Yeah, so that has a good flight. It actually had some good integrity. I threw it on hyzer, but I threw it pretty hard and it pushed straight on hyzer. Never wanted to leave that angle. So that thing's got some good integrity. It's definitely a good disc, and I might even throw it forehand, who knows. Now we got the Rock. I don't think I've ever thrown this thing on forehand, so let's see how she does. Yep. So that slight hyzer, I threw it pretty much exactly the same as that Ultra actually, but into the headwind, slight hyzer, flipped up, turned all the way to the left and landed flat. So I don't know why, I've always had a feeling that that disc would do that, and that's probably why I never have thrown it forehand. So there you go, there's the first difference in those two mid-ranges, is I threw them both on the same forehand angle on hyzer, and the Ultra happened to hold the hyzer the whole time and the Rock turned over. So there you go, that's a big difference. If you're looking for that forehand slot where it slowly glides to the right, I think that Ultra is probably your move. All right guys, so final thoughts of these discs. First, we got the peppermint. This thing is an absolute beauty. I think the furthest I threw it today was like 300 or so, which is actually pretty good. I didn't think I would get it out that far, but that's pretty good. But I think mostly I'll be throwing it on hyzer and like flat shots for up shots and shorter par threes, around like 250-ish, and below. And then anything outside of that, so like 260, 270 to like 300 is typically where I'll break out the zone. But I have been having struggles getting up and down and putting it close from under 250 because I throw it long with the zone, or I'll try to tone down a little bit and end up way short. So it's kind of a zone that I've been struggling a little bit with. I should probably practice that shot as well, but it's definitely good to have a disc like this so that way I can get up and down under pressure and still throw that kind of full hyzer shot. So I think those will both be in the bag. Whereas these two discs, they fly very similar. Like I said, when throwing forehand, that was the only difference I saw in flight and stability from these. I threw this one on hyzer into a little bit of headwind, and it kind of just rode straight and then faded off slowly. Whereas the rock, I threw it on that same angle, it felt like, and it just flipped up, turned over, and never came back. So for some reason, this rock does not hold the same integrity with the forehand release as the Ultra. So that's definitely something to think about. It might not be the same for every rock or for every thrower. I know the champion ones of these are a little bit more overstable, although this one is pretty overstable. I think this one really just comes down to a hand feel, because regardless, I probably won't be throwing them forehand too much. And I'm kind of leaning towards this one. It just has that, like kind of rounder feel. And like I said earlier, it has that slight mini dome, not a big dome at all, but that slight dome that just makes it really comfortable for the backhand. Whereas this is flat and a little more rigid on the sides. So while I do throw this a lot and enjoy the disc, I don't know, I think this might just be taking its place, but we will just have to see. So I don't know yet. They'll probably both be in the bag for now. Down the line, we'll see which one takes the spot. But again, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.